Another big day. So I had all these plans about how this was going to work, and it actually came together. So for those of those friends of mine who say I overthink stuff, ha! It worked. That dolly holds the car just right. Goes in there, lifted it right off, rolled it right out. Boom. Okay, chassis is about to tuck under that, and we'll see what's next. Okay, sports fans, here's what's next. The body is sitting on here, and I'm starting to figure out what I got to hack away, and the rest of this floor has got to go, and that means I'm going to have to change how I support the body on the wooden dolly when I take it out of there. But I think I got solutions, because those big old giant rockers I put in are just awesome as far as I can grab the car in a number of different spots. So I'll be good. Yeah, this is exciting. The one thing that is a little bit surprising, and only because it's the first time I've put it together, is the front of the S10 frame is going to get lobbed right at the end of the steering box. So obviously I have to box that for strength, the front. But that means that pretty much the steering box is going to be the most forward thing in the car. I'll have to figure out some other way to attach some kind of bumper or something. Won't be a big deal, just, you know, add it to the list of stuff to do. So that is interesting. So yeah, we're going to lob that off, that front mount, right where the steering box is. The back is going to get the floor taken out of it, as well as this rear lower apron, which is mangled anyway. I was kind of hoping to preserve that, because while it looks awful, it's really just surface rust. And thought I might be able to use that for mounting, but I'm going to have to do something else, because those rails are going to need to be up inside there. Obviously, the suspension is super tall right now because there's no weight on it, but it's going to get lowered suspension, be a different axle, different suspension in the rear altogether, so I'm sure everything will go lower. But I still want to get those frame rails into the car so that once the suspension is dropped, the car sits low. I mean, obviously it needs to be low to the ground. So there we are. Okay. Next will be lots of sawzalling and death wheel cutting, and yeah, we'll check back. That's the new version of the dolly, and ha! It still works, but I had to make some changes. The dolly dropped the car off exactly as needed, but going back and forth from the lift to the dolly presented some issues, and so what I've had to do is to get the dolly back and forth with this, had to change some of the dolly, and then I also had to change how the arms worked on the lift. I had to take out the extensions on that, because they would hang up with the chassis rail. So as I have it now, with those rear arms removed, I can easily lift the chassis up, bring in that wood dolly, and place it on the new rocker rails, and then wheel it away. So it's easy to go back and forth now. The balance worked out pretty good. I will still clamp the rockers onto the wood bracing of that dolly, just to ensure there's no chippage, because I'm holding it mostly in the middle, and that would be awful. Anyway, so that's follow up on that. So yesterday was a big day. Got a bunch of things figured out as far as how I'm going to mount it. Got to see this thing fit on. The rockers that I welded in, I got lucky. They coordinate really well with the existing vehicle frame. It did some measuring, but it wasn't a lot of things I would have changed. Actually, there's nothing I would have changed. Right now I have the car sitting on the body so that I can see what the stance is going to look like, although it's kind of, the body is actually below the frame in the back, because I just wanted to see what my clearances were. The suspension, because this is a truck suspension, is still sitting really high, and as I get done with suspension work, the frame will be really close to the ground, and then the body will fit on. But I wanted to kind of fit it to just get my head wrapped around what some of the challenges were going to be, and not to mention clearance the body as much as I needed to. The main thing I'm going to play with right now is this engine compartment. I knew was going to be snug because it's kind of short, but I already hacked out those inner fenders left that edge up there towards the top of the fender just for some added strength, and I suspect more of that will come out in the front here, because when I started just measuring a little bit, it's going to be snug. This is an S10 truck frame, and there are lots of formulas for getting an LS into it, no big deal. But I'm sure part of that formula didn't include having to lob off that much of the front of the frame. So right now, the way it sits, the steering box is forward of pretty much everything, and the frame has been cut right there in front of the box, and in that space between the little drop down part of the front of the steering box and the grill is where I am going to be able to get my cooling system. And I'm going to obviously have to customize the heck out of that to get that cooling system right up on that grill to keep it as forward as possible. And that's still going to not leave me really enough room to put the engine exactly on the mounts there. I mean, I've seen enough other LS engine compartments that are snug that there's ways to get it really close to that. But I think I'm going to lean into this modification and go ahead and still plan on getting the radiator as far forward as I can. But because I have a lot of firewall flexibility, and because of how narrow it gets up front here, I think what I'm going to do is end up really moving the engine mounts back quite a bit. And I'm not exactly clear what it's called, but that other bracket that is holding the lower part of the rear control arm is pretty stout. It's far enough below where the engine mount plane would be. But I feel like I'm going to try to move this engine back quite a bit. If I have to deal with it, why not? Because the more weight I get towards the middle of the car and share the weight with the back wheels, the better for handling. I'm going to be fabricating stuff on that firewall anyway, so why not? And Lord knows I got enough room in there in the vehicle to do it. Oh yeah, you see those rails sticking out. Those, I just ran those long. Those will get cut back to some point once I figure that out. But anyway, so the next step, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hoist over one of the engines and set it in there. I'm not even going to set engine mounts on it. I'm just going to use the hoist to dangle it in there so I can get some more pictures of what kind of space I have to deal with in there. And we'll show that in a sec. Probably just my inexperience, but it always gets a little edgy there when you've got a, I don't know, 400, 500 pound block sitting that high up in the air. About to swing that in and see how it fits. Well, this is interesting as hell. This thing fits better than I thought it would. I have got it perched right about where the Holley LS swap mounts would place it in the cradle. I don't have the engine mounts on, and it's sitting probably about a ½ inch to an inch high because I still have the original pan on, and that is touching the steering stuff. So I've got it just kind of wedged there. It's not even sitting, it's really still sitting on the chain. But anyway, so that's the location of it, and I am just surprised how much space I have to the firewall. It still presents challenges up front, but it doesn't look nearly as intimidating as the tape measure said it was going to. It's still tight, and those inner fenders are going to definitely have to get opened up. The hood sits on this thing all the way up to the firewall cowl, so there's a bunch of engine height room in there. So the intake will be easy enough to work out. But this is interesting. I'm glad I took the time to do this. It'd be nice to have one of those lightweight engine block mock-up things instead of having to wrestle with the engine hoist, but it's all good. I think I'm still motivated to move the engine back a bunch. If I have to move it a ½ inch, I might as well move it 10 inches is kind of my approach to this. So I don't mind fabbing the firewall all to death. That's not a big thing at all. So to get the weight moved back, I think I'm going to definitely do that. Anyway, so that's interesting. I'm glad I went through this exercise. This is pretty much it today for having the car mated with the chassis. I'm going to separate it because the real work now is going to be working on the suspension and getting everything cleaned up, ready for that. So I don't think I'm going to have the body on here much longer. It's going to go back onto its wood dolly. And again, with the ha, it worked. And then work on the frame inside the garage and do some of the messy stuff on the body out there or out in the driveway. The body has got a bunch of junk on it that needs to get wire wheeled and cleaned up on the inside because I just can't handle how much surface rust is on the inside of that thing. So I'm going to deal with that at some point. But nice thing is when there's so much to do, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do based on what you feel like doing that day. So anyway, all right, thanks for watching.